This last week for vacation. Hope everybody's back. Welcome back. Today is February 1st. We are continuing our series on the Ramchal's Mesilat Yesharim. We're in the middle of Perek Yud Gimel, and we're going to pick up right where we are. We were in the middle of talking about something called Perishut, and he's going to pick up right there about how to keep away from things that would cause us problems. Hamal Bushim, regarding clothing. Yakishutim. Right, makeup and making yourself beautiful. Right, that's not asur at all. Right, the only problem of clothing or things like that that you're going to be wearing is shatnez, right? Once you have those two requirements, there's no shatnez, and if it's a four-cornered garment, you're going to have tzitzit, then anything is really allowed. Omnam, however, right? Now, everyone knows that, right, if you put on these very super fancy clothing, rikima means embroideries and, very flashy looking clothing. So that causes ga'ava. Yeah, guys wearing something really, really hashuv, right? Or a woman for that matter, and could lead to znut. Milivada kin'ava ta'ava. Besides from the the jealousy factor and the desire factor that other people are going to want what you're wearing, and everything that comes with what's very expensive and people are trying to run after to try to acquire. Right? There's a midrash. Rabbi says that once the Yetzer Hara sees that there's a person that walks very haughtily, he walks with his gava, and he's begadav, he's checking his clothing every minute, misalsel b'sa'aro, he's playing with his hair, right? Omer zeshali, this guy is very interested in the external factor. That's the Yetzer Hara. He can get to such a person. Regarding just leisure time and speech right? If it's not doing anything that's asur, but din Torah mutaru, no question about it. Again, that mina Torah, no problem. You want to go for a little stroll, you want to take a little time off, you want to go a little vacation, right? Mutar, no question about it, right? And speech, no problem, as long as you're saying things that are allowed to be said. Omnam, however, think kama bitul Torah nimshach mimenu, how much, right, bitul Torah is there in a vacation? Now, not saying not taking vacations, right? Because vacations are part of a necessity to be able to continue to learn Torah. Sometimes you just get burnt out. You need a little break. He's not talking about that. That's pashut. That if you're doing it l'shem, I need to, to keep myself fit mentally. I need a little break. I need a little rest so that I can continue to grow. That's fine. That's not part of what he's talking about over here. He's talking about over here a situation when that becomes the ikar. The vacation becomes the main focus, right? Not the Torah. So that, but in Torah now, kama bitul Torah nimshach mize mimenu v'kama lashon hara. When you're sitting around haki balash, things come out. Kama min ashekarim and lies and litzanut, right? Scoffing. Ve'omer berov devarim lo yihdal pesha. The more you speak, right, the more issues that are going to arise. Kol davar. Bottom line, he says, kevan shekol inyanei haolam enam ela sakanut atzumot, right? Everything that is in enjoyment in this world could become potentially very dangerous for a person. Meaning why? Because it might lead to sin. Right? How could we not praise someone that's trying to stay away from those issues? It's someone who really goes beyond and really wants to stay away. This is an example of what's called perishut, separation, that's beneficial. Right? That you're only going to take from this world, enjoyment from this world, or the necessities from this world. That's what you're going to take. Things that you need, that are required for your survival. Whatever your situations are that you need for. Well, it doesn't mean you're going to have to live on bread and water, you'll see in a minute, but it means whatever your stature is and whatever it is that you need to maintain your stature, that's what you need. But going beyond that, that's when he's starting to talk about, you want to be a hasid, right? You want to be a pious person, then you need to think about doing perishut and holding back from things that even though you could acquire them, you don't really need them. He says, Rabbi b'ma'amar shezacharti. We mentioned it once, I think, maybe last class or two ago, that Rabbi said, "Shelo ne'eneh min ha'olam hazeh afilu etzba ketana." Okay, now Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was maybe the wealthiest Jew at the time. He's the Nasi. He's extremely wealthy, and he says on his deathbed that I didn't derive benefit from this world, even with my little pinky. And yet, in other places, the Gemara talks about the opulence that Rabbi had in his house, the types of foods that he had in his house. So some seems like somewhat contradictory, but we'll see in a minute that it's actually not. Because based on your stature, every person is required to maintain what they can, and therefore, for the B stature, that was what the norm was, and therefore, for him, it's not excess. Perishut is staying away from the excess, not staying away from what you actually need. And therefore he says, Moshe ishtabech Rabbi b'ma'amar shezachati lo ne'eneh min ha'olam hazeh afilu be'etzba ketana im heyoto nasi Yisrael v'shulchano shulchan melachim be'echrech likar nesiuto. Right? He is the nasi. His table needs to be set like the table of a king. You can't have a king who just puts a little rice and fasulia on the table and that's it. Right? So be'echrech likar nesiuto, in order to give honor to his kingdom, ma'aram zechron lebracha, shnei goyim bebitnech. That's a derasha on the pasuk from Yitzhak and Esav. Ze Rabbi ve'Antoninus. Okay, that Antoninus was the Roman emperor, and Rabbi befriended him, and they used to come every day to learn by Rabbi, and each one was the king. One was the Roman emperor, and one was the Nasi of Am Yisrael. Shelo pasak me'al shulchanam, right, from both Rabbi and Antoninus, on their table daily. Lo hazeh, lo kishut, lo tznon, lo b'otahama, v'lo gshamim. Nowadays, we got used to having on our table, fruits and vegetables all year round, regardless of the season that they actually grow. But especially in those days, that was not the case. You can only have them, right, when they are in season. They weren't able to transport them. They weren't able to refrigerate them. But Rabbi and Antoninus could actually afford to have it brought from very far away lands, and that's what they did. And therefore, their table had these fruits all year round, and that's the praise that they're giving, because again, he's the king, and the king should have that. V'Chizkiyahu melech Yehuda kemochen, similarly by Yehuda v'Chizkiyahu, right? Shu'ar mamarim shezachati kulam mekayimim umorim sheyesh la'adam lefrosh mikol ma shehu ta'anug olami lema'an lo yipol b'sakanato. Right? A person should stay away from the enjoyments of this world so he doesn't fall into the pitfalls of having too much excess. And again, an excess is it's based on your stature. Okay, it's so subjective depending upon who you are. V'im tish'al v'tomar. If you're going to ask me, Imken, efo shezeh davar mitztarech umuchrach, right? If you tell me that this idea of perishut is a requirement, if I want to be a chassid, then and this is what I should do. Lama lo gazru alav hachachamim kemo shegazru al seyagot ve'atakanot shegazru. Why was there no rabbinical enactment, right, to put a fence around all the pleasures of this world and say don't take too much? If you tell me it's not such a good thing, he says, "Hineh hateshuvah mevo'eret upshuta." The answer to that question is very clear and simple. Why? Ki lo gazru chachamim gezerah ela im ken rov hatzibur yecholim la'amod ba. General rule, that when the rabbis were going to be metaken, right, some kind of takana, right, as by itself, the word itself means letaken, to fix, right? So they're going to set up an enactment to fix an issue. They wouldn't do it unless the majority of the people would be able to actually withstand their enactment. And if they couldn't, so then that defeats the purpose of having it, and therefore they wouldn't even do it. When we're talking about being a hasid, maybe hasid is not for everyone. Right? It's not for everyone to be on that level, and therefore there was no reason for the rabbis to set up a takana for this purpose. Okay, and therefore he says that's the reason. Oh, let me just put on the. I forgot to put on my little highlighter. Okay, here we go. There we go. Right? You don't have to be a hasid. You could be a tzaddik, and you could still have a little, a little more pleasures, and therefore no reason to do takana. Says, the limited people, right? Some of the people, right? The special ones. The ones that want to merit to be closer to Hashem, right? So that they will be able to be zocher to everyone else, right? That their being pious will bring zechut to everyone else. Hanitla bahem, people that are relying on them. Lahem magia l'kayem mishnat chasidim. Those people, right, should behave like chasidim. Asher lo yachulu kayem acherim, because not everyone else would be able to do it. So they didn't put a takana to put it on everybody because they wouldn't be able to do it. But that doesn't, exclude the people that could do it from doing it, right? And therefore, those people that could do it should do it. They'll be the chasidim. Through the merit of what they do, they'll bring zechut to all Am Yisrael. Right? This is what I'm talking about being a poresh, and that's what Hashem is choosing. Again, when you choose from something, so you're selecting something from the whole. So he's choosing out to be the chasidim. People are pulling themselves out from the group, and they will want to be the Hasid. Right? It's impossible that everybody in the entire nation is the same level, right? Yesh ba'am madregot, ish lefi sichlo. Everybody's on their own level based on their intellect, based on their actions, based on their social stature, based on all kinds of things. Hine lefachot yechidei segula, right? At least some of these special people, yimtzeu asher yachinu et atzmam, they would be able to prepare themselves, hachana gemura, right? To prepare themselves fully. Ve'al yedei muchanim, based on, because of those people, yizku gam habilti muchanim. The other people that could not do it will also have zichut, el ahavato yitbarach u'hashra'at shechinato, that they will all be able to benefit from loving Hashem and the Shekhinah that will rest among Am Yisrael because of those few pious. V'cheinyan shedasu zichronam livracha, like the rabbis tell us, be'arba'a minim shebalulav, right? We know that each one represents a different type of Jew, and we say, why are we keeping the arava there, right? Lo ta'am v'lo reach corresponds to Rasha. So yavo ele v'yichapru al ele, right? That we will let the other groups that represented by the other minim come to bring kapara on those, and therefore when we have the entire nation together, so the ones that are more pious can give kapara for those that are less. Fine. Ukbar matzanu leEliyahu zachur latov she'amal Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi b'maaseh de'ula bar Koshev, right? He says, I'm going to bring you an example about Eliyahu Navi with Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi in a story of this person of Ula bar Koshev, U'shehevio lo mishnahi afu amar v'chi mishnat chasidimhi, which is part of the story. So I think we just might as well read the story. I'll bring it up on the screen here. Here we go. Look at number 120 down over here. Maaseh de Ula bar Koshev. So it says, Kach besupar, it's a Gemara. And it says, Ula bar Koshev nitba al yedei malchut lemishpat sheyesh bo chiyuv mita. So this person was decided by the government decided that he's chayav mita. They're going to kill him. What did he do? Barach, he ran away. Ubal ir Lod. He went to the city of Lod. Etzel Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Okay. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think? Ba'u anshe Hayil hamelech v'hikifu et ha'ir. Right. So the government now, the army comes, surrounds the city of Lod. Amru lahem, im en atem notnim lanu oto. If you don't give us, we know he's there. If you don't bring us this guy Ula bar Koshev, nahariv et kol ha'ir. We're going to destroy the entire city. We're going to kill everybody in the city. Allah Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi elav leshachneo sheyaskim lihimaseh la'anshei ha'malchut. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi goes to this guy, right, Ula bar Koshev, and he convinces him to give himself up. Kedei shelo yamutu kol anshei ha'ir biglalo. So because if he doesn't, he's going to cause the death of the entire city. He accepted. Umisarulo leidei chayalim. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi handed him over to the soldiers. Now Eliyahu Navi, right? Shachul Atov. Shaya ragil hitgalot el Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. He was Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's buddy. They used to visit. He used to visit him all the time. All of a sudden, lo nigla elav od lachar mikre zeh. He stopped coming after this story. Eliyahu Navi stopped coming to visit Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. What did he do? Sam Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi tzomot rabim. He fasts many fasts, all right, for making up for this. And nigla elav Eliyahu levasof. Finally, Eliyahu came back. Amar lo Eliyahu, right? It tells him, le'achar ma she'asita hifsakti lehigalot lecha sheken v'chila moserot ani nigle. Eliyahu Navi tells him, after you handed over, right, this guy to the government, I stopped coming because I'm not going to come visit a moser. You're handing over a Jew to the goyim, I'm not coming to you. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi v'lo mishna asiti. What did I do? I followed the Mishnah. Why? Because the Mishnah, it's the Kasher Tosefta, says that what? It says, Im yehidu nohrim Yehudi echad b'tevi'ah shimseruhu lahem ve'im lo yihargu et kulam mutar lemosro lahem. When the goyim come and say, give us somebody, all right, or we're going to kill you all, you're not allowed to give anybody. But if they come and say, give us Mr. X, or we're going to kill you all, so then you're allowed to actually hand them over, because the goyim decided who they want, for whatever reason. He was chayam mitah, whatever you want to say. But if they specified, I am allowed to give him over, and that's what I did over here. Not only that, I convinced him to give himself up. Amar lo Eliyahu sells back to Yeshua Levi. Zo mishnat chasidim hi. Very nice that's the halacha, but you're a hasid. You're above this mishnah. Klomar, omnam zo halacha l'hamon am. Aval hasidim yesh mishnah acheret, and therefore you shouldn't have gotten involved in this scenario. That's what Eliyahu Rabbi is telling you. Therefore, you see, right, that it's not for everybody to be a hasid, right, and the hasid is going to be held on a higher standard. Clearly, that even though it is the halacha, he was penalized that Eliyahu Rabbi stopped coming to visit. Good, okay. However, a perishut hara. What about the other side of the coin, right? Staying away from things that it's not good to do. Bad. It's a bad idea to stay away from. Like what? Like the goyim, it's a reference, I think, to the you'll see in a minute, the major religion in the world that's not the Muslims. Asher lo dai she'enam lokhim min ha'olam ma she'en lahem hechrech bo. Right? Bad enough they don't take things that they actually need. Elak shekvar yimneu me'atzmam gam et ha'muchrach. They withhold even things that they do need. V'yaseru gufam b'yisurim udvarim zarim. Right? And they hurt their bodies with suffering and things that God doesn't want. Shelo hafetz Hashem b'hem kelal. Right? Hadrabah, hafuch. Chachamim amru asul adam shisagef etzmo. You're not allowed to cause yourself suffering and pain and physical pain and spiritual pain, emotional pain. You're not allowed to do that. Ubinyan hasedakah, regarding taking sedakah, the Gemara says, "Kol mi shetzarich," right? Litol ve'eno notel, harei ze shofech damim. Person who needs tzedakah to live and doesn't take it, it's like he's killing himself. He's not allowed to do that, so he has to take. He's trying to be poresh from something that he shouldn't be, right? Separate from it. Right? It says that Hashem, Adam became nefesh haya. He Adam lenefesh haya. What is nefesh haya? It says that neshama shenatati, the neshama that I gave inside of you, haya. Meaning what? You have to make sure that it's going to live. Ve'amru kol hayoshev b'ta'anit nikra choteh. Anyone who fasts when they're not required to is considered a sinner. Ve'miduha, they explain, what do you mean? Sending as fasting is a good thing. What do you call me a sinner for? So no. Someone who's weak, that can't fast. That's what it's talking about. When you can't fast and you do, that's the problem. Okay. The Hillel haya omer, gomel nafsho leish hased al achilat haboker. Right? This pasuk about gomel nafsho ish hased, right? A person who gives hased to his nefesh. What was a reference to? Eating breakfast, right? Achilat boker, vayarochetz panav yadav lechvod kono. You wash your hands, you wash your face, make yourself look good. Kal v'chomer miduknaot hamelachim. That's we learn a kal v'chomer from the pictures that they used to distribute of the king, right? And the people would before they looked at the picture would make sure that they themselves looked presentable. Okay, they still do this in many Middle Eastern countries where the president has got pictures of himself all over the country. It happens in a lot of places, and that's what it's talking about over here. Okay, and therefore, if the people do it for the picture, so how much more so we should do it for the king of the world? Okay. Bottom line, he says now, if you don't necessarily need it, right? So it's better that you separate from it when you can, right? Fine. If there's any reason that he needs an item, once he needs it, So you need to dance on a fine line. Do I need this item? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, you should take it. If the answer is no, I don't need it, so you shouldn't take it, right? And if the answer is yes, and I don't take it, then I'm a choteh, right? Just like if the answer is no, and I do take it, I'm a choteh. Zeh haklal. Ne'eman, right? This is the rule. Ach mishpat haperatim al pi haklal eno masur ela shikul da'at. It takes, right? It's not a general rule. It takes a little bit of input from yourself to figure out, do I need this item or not? Ulefi sichlo yehulal ish כי אי אפשר לקבץ כל הפרטים, כי רבים הם, ואין שכל האדם יכול להקיף. Okay, so he says, "Ulefi sichlo yulal ish," based the person's on his intellect, the person will be praised. Ki efshar lekabetz kol haperatim. It's impossible for me, says the Ramchal, to gather all the details to decide you need this item, you don't need this item. Yirabim him ve'en sechel ha'adam yachol lahakif. Right, a person can't follow al kulam ela davar beito. You have to make a decision on the spot, right? As it occurs. Do you need this item, and do you not need the item? Okay, and that would determine if you're going to be poresh from it or not. Now, just because you want it doesn't mean you need it, right? When you want it and you don't need it, that's what he's talking about, being a pirishu, being someone who's parush, separating. Okay, we're starting Perek Yudalid, right? The breakdowns or the categories of being someone who's considered poresh. The head, the top categories, head categories. There is being poresh, separating from enjoyment and pleasures. Perishut bedinim, those are Torah halachot, and perishut b'minhagim is separating from, the way of the world. We'll call it for now until he defines it clearer for us. You'll see. Haperishut behanaot, regarding being poresh from things that you enjoy. Ma'ishkanu perek hakodem, we mentioned it earlier. Tehainu shelo lakachet midivrei ha'olam ela ma shehatzorich yachriach. So being poresh, right, from things that are enjoyments in this world, is how do I do that? By just taking what I need, and what I don't need, I leave alone. V'davar zeh yakif al kol mash ta'anug le'echad min hachoshim. This covers any kind of enjoyment for any one of the senses. Hainu ma'achalot, eating, bebeilot, having relations, b'malbushim, clothing, tiulim, right, strolling around, vacations, b'shmuot, right, things that are going around in the world, talking about things, rak bayamim sha'onig bahem mitzvah, except for the days when there is a mitzvah to have oneg, like Shabbat, like Yom Tov. Therefore, you want to have extra ma'achal, fine. You want to have malbushim, you want to have extra relations, whatever you want to do to enjoy the day, mutar. Okay? Because that you're doing l'shem mitzvah. Okay? Perishut b'dinim, regarding being a poresh, regarding halachot in the Torah. Hu la'achmir bahem tamid. The way to do it is to be stringent. Lahush afilu l'divrei yachid b'mahloket. Right? To be weary even of a single opinion in an argument, to be mahmir and accept upon yourself the stringency. Im ta'amo nir'eh. Right? Afilu en halacha kemoto. If he's logical, right? If his reason is logical, even if it's not the halacha, then a person who wants to be a poresh would accept that stringent opinion. Ubitnai, however, conditionally, shelo yeh humro hulo. Right? That the humrah that you want to keep doesn't actually turn into being mekel. Now, what does that mean? How does that happen? So I'll give an example. On the bottom, he says, Shelo tetzeh kula mitoch hanagut humrah, right? So that the result of the humrah should not be a leniency. Kegon, example, Yahmir al atzmo lema'et b'dibur, right? He wants to be stringent, not to speak too much. Ub'mitoch kach yavo lehakel b'mitzvat tochecha. Right? So you know what? He's going to now, because he doesn't speak a lot, is not going to give tochecha to somebody, to rebuke somebody, because he doesn't want to transgress his perishut of speech. Well, that's now a kula, because you have an obligation to give tochecha. So a kula that comes out of your chumrah, that's not allowed. Ulahmir b'sefekot, you should be stringent in a safek. Afilu b'makom she'efshar lahakel b'hem. Right? Even in a scenario where it is possible to be mekel, halachically, right? But if you want to be a poresh, you should be stringent. Like, what does that mean? He says, safek derabanan lekula, or safek sefeka on a double safek, on a deoraita, things where we would normally say mutar because you have a safek, the poresh person should be mahmir. Okay? Ukvar be'anu lanu chachamenu zichronam levracha. By the way, I just want to insert something over here, that if a person who decides to take upon themselves this level needs to make sure that they should not be forcing their humrot on other people, right? This is a level that someone that wants to attain can attain for themselves, but not to be able to force that on others, because that's absolutely not allowed, right? The other person has the choice to make if they want to be a poresh or not. Can't force perishut on people, okay? Kvar be'anu lanu chachamenu zichronam levracha, ma'amar Yechezkel, right? Pasuk that he says, nafshi lo metuma'a, shelo achalti behema, shehora ba chacham, velo achalti mibesar kuskus. Okay, what does that mean? Yechezkel says, it's Pasuk, and he says, I did not eat from an animal that the rabbi had to make a ruling on. Which was a questionable, was it a terefa, was it something wrong with the animal? Anything that we had to ask a question on, I wouldn't eat from that animal, right? Even though the rabbi might have said kosher, he wouldn't eat from it. The gam lo achalti basar kuskus. Basar kuskus means is the Aramaic word for slaughter, for shuhet. So he's saying, I didn't eat from an animal that they told him slaughter it. Why? Because the animals must be sickly; it's about to die. If the animal dies without shechita, it's nevela; it's not going to be allowed to be eaten. So slaughter it now before it dies. Now you can eat it. He says, I wouldn't eat from that animal either. Okay? Hine calls them mutar min adin, right? Vadai, no question that if the rabbi was matir, it's okay, and if you slaughter before it dies, it's okay, right? Mutar min adin, no question. Ela ihu de ahmir anafshe, he was mahmir for himself. Kvar zacharti. Right, lemala she'en lilmod mima she'utar al kol Yisrael lapirushim sheyesh lahem larchik min hakiur. You can't learn that just because it's mutar for everybody else, it should be mutar to someone who's parush, because they're trying to separate, to be different. Min adome umin lo dome lo dome. You want to stay away from anything that has any connection to any issues. Dechen amar mor ukva ana bahi milta hala bar hamara legabe abba. Okay, Gemara Masech Chulin Ukva says regarding this idea of pirishut, I am like spoiled wine vinegar, right, near my father, who is considered, delicious, beautiful wine. Why? The ilu Abba, my father, kad achil bisra, when he would eat meat, ha'idna now. So if you had a meal of meat, lohave achil givina ad lemachar hihashta. He would wait until tomorrow, 24 hours later, right, to eat dairy. Ve'ana, and me, says Mor Ukva, behai se'udata lo achelna, be'se'udata ahariti achelna. I don't eat, if I had, right, meat, and then in the same meal, I won't have dairy, but the next meal, I will have dairy. So he's not waiting 24 hours. By the way, this is the source of the 6 hours that our minhag is to follow. Comes from this Gemara right here, that I would eat in the next meal. And the idea is that you're eating a meal every 6 hours. There's 12 hours of daylight. You used to eat 2 meals a day, except for Shabbat when they would eat 3, obviously. But so that's where it comes from. So 2 meals a day in daylight hours of 12 is 1 every 6 hours, and therefore 6 hours. That's the source for that halakha. Okay, and therefore it says, but now notice that he's saying I'm not on the level of the poresh of my father. Now, bevadai she'en psak halacha kimo shaya aviv oseh. You can't tell me that the halacha is 24 hours, and therefore what? Mor Ukva says I'm not following the halacha. But it can't be. She'im lochen lo haya Mor Ukva oseh neged zeh. Right? If it was the halacha, there's no way Mor Ukva wouldn't follow it. Right? Ela she'aviv mahmir haya beperishato. Right? That Mor Ukva's father was a poresh, but he was an extra poresh. He was right beyond. He was very mahmir. Ulekach haya Mor Ukva kore atzmo hala bar hamra. Why? Lo haya parush kol kach kamohu. Because he wasn't as parush as his father. Right? He was a parush also, but just not as parush as his father. And that's what he's saying. Okay, and therefore we see that perishut is not for everybody. There's all different kinds of levels. And we'll stop here, Be'ezat Hashem, and continue next week. Everyone have a beautiful week. Kol Tuv.